involved with the JC organization. I was a past president of that organization, and as a result of that, became involved with the parks and so on, and eventually just kept involved with the community and got involved as far as second vice president in '78 with the festival.
What year were you president?
I was president in the year 1980, as far as that was a festival year.
And what's your most memorable experiences of that year?
Well, I think probably the most memorable one as far as the festival is concerned is that that was the second year of the real change of the festival. And the first year I started was actually with your dad, Don Wallmeister, where the change was made from a beer drinking festival to a family festival. In fact, we had a petition by the community, and I believe it was like August of 1979, which was just when I started the year, as far as improvements in the festival to include things of limiting beer drinking, having more family type of entertainment, better lighting, more controls of the festival grounds, and so on. So that was kind of our goal that year is to finish that transition. Of course, what happens usually is when you do that kind of a transition, the profits go down a bit, whereas we did maintain them that year real well. So.
Mm-hmm. Who was the Princess in Court your year?
The Princess in Court that year was Joyce Gessler, who was a princess that particular year. And then our court consisted of Barb Pellet and Linda Nash that particular year. And had the opportunity of going to, I think, 3 or 4 different parades with them. And I think one of the most memorable ones was we went to the State Fair Parade in Detroit. And in just response of all the people down there, of Frankenmuth being downtown Detroit was kind of exciting.
I understand 1980 was an excellent year financially. How did you do?
The year 1980, the net income from the festival was actually just shy of $50,000. And what we did then is we voted as a board to distribute, I believe it was about $30,000 among the community from the earnings of that particular year. That was over and above the capital expenditures such as the parking lot, which we were in, I think, the 5th year paying for, which was an acquisition of 10 acres down there. Plus, we also had a pretty good capital expenditure on putting the parking lot lights down there in excess of $10,000 that year also.
You had some key people that helped you out a great deal during your year. Who were they?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize, a lot of people that do get involved. The 2 people that I had that particular year that went on to be chairmans, which kind of reflect back, kind of fun. One was John Dieterding, who was co-chairman as far as parking, and Jim Herzog was the other one, which both of them came on to be presidents of the CEC. They started at the ground because parking is and probably was the worst chairmanship of the whole festival. The other people that were involved that year, he wasn't mayor at that time, but President Mayor Gary Ruprecht was my parade chairman. And the other person that many of the people may be familiar with that was very active back in those days, especially with the Princess Ball, was Frank Pringle from Frankenmuth.
How about your parade? Tell us about your parade that year.
The parade was kind of interesting because we had a big challenge from your dad's year, Don's year. Larry Doobie was his parade chairman, and it's the only time that I can recall that would have been '79 and not '80 that the parade was actually discontinued because of bad weather. So Larry took a year off, and Gary Ruprecht came back for the parade chairman that particular year. And we had a new challenge because that was the first year that the parade was to be televised, and was televised by Channel 12. Was actively involved with Don Keller, putting that whole program together, getting sponsorships and the organization of it. And that was really kind of a fun part of that year.
What problems or challenges did you face during your year as president?
I think the biggest challenge that we had was what I mentioned before, was a transition from a beer drinking festival to a family festival. We also had the challenge that particular year it was the first year that they went back from the 18-year-old legal to drink to 21, and We had some real issues there just because, you know, it's not fun to go back 3 years and not be able to do it while you've been doing it 3 years. So that was probably, those two things were really our challenge that particular year.
Now for the fun stuff. I know you were quite a rowdy bunch. Tell us some fun stories about your year.
Well, my wife was telling one the other night that we had kind of a post-festival party, and I think we had like 250 people that attended, and we had a nice steak, and my cohorts were real nice to me and so on. They let me take my shoes off before they threw me in a casket river. And I guess one of the neat things back then that I really enjoyed about the festival was that the people of the community really did come out and get involved. We had issues where, you know, my chairman year, you took a week off as far as vacation. You dedicated it to the community, to the festival. But we just had a lot of good times with the people. And I think the neat thing is that they did not stop at that particular point. They've carried on through the years, and some of my best friends actually came out of acquaintances and co-workers and so on at the Bavarian Festival.
Jim, how would you sum up your festival experience?
I guess my festival experience is always a challenge. The thing I enjoyed is I love challenges. I've heard a lot of presidents say, gee whiz, you know, I'll be glad when it's over with, and, you know, those kind of issues. I never was that way. I like the issues. I like to confront the issues and solve the issues and just have a good party and a good time and a good festival for the community. And I think we were able to achieve that and change the festival at the same time to more of a family type atmosphere down there at the park.
Greg Otter, Jack Otter's son, thanks for talking with us. Greg, what year was your dad president of the festival?
1972.
What do you remember as things that happened that were real memorable during your dad's year as president?
Well, first of all, he had Miss America 1972 was there, and I think that was the first year for Miss America. And he got to entertain her, and they did go to the Drum and Bugle Corps and a few other events in town. I think she was here for more than a day.
Anything else that you may recall about your dad's year?
He actually was doing a lot of emceeing back then. He was, I think, chairman of the bands, entertainment, bringing in all the bands from around the country. He became real good friends with the Rhinelanders, and I think their first year was in '74. He would spend a lot of time with them during the week, and he would set aside at least a night, and they would come over to the house and, you know, play cards to the wee hours of the morning. And he became real close to them and stayed friends with them all the way to last year.
That's great. So he really made a lot of lifelong friends through his contacts at the festival.
Yes, he did. Also, when Dad's year, 1972, I remember that he would always take the week off, and a few years after that, too, he would take the whole week of the festival off and be down there just about round the clock. He enjoyed being with people, meeting new people with the bands, and just thoroughly enjoying building the festival and bringing it to what it was, you know, in the 70s. And there was a lot of people back then that would come to the festival, and he just had a real great time with it.
Greg, your dad spent many years down at the festival, and he was a part of the festival for many people. I know he's missed by many.
Yes, thank you. And he's made a lot of lifelong friends, and he had a great time doing his work down there and work with the JCs, and he had a lot of fulfillment out of that.
Don Hahn, tell me, Don, how did you get involved with the Civic Events Council?
My experience with the Bavarian Festival goes back over 30 years when I started working on the Youth Parade Committee.
And you've been on the board in some capacity or another since when?
Well, after the work on the Youth Parade Committee, I became involved with what was at the time known as a ticket committee. Today it's known as the Admissions Committee, and I worked for many years with Dr. Vic and Bonnie Engel and fellow employees at First of America Bank, among others. And probably that is something that I remember most fondly, and that is working with the people and the experiences we had. And especially with ticket committee, we would have a critique session at a breakfast on Sunday following the Bavarian Festival, and it was at that time when we had quite a few laughs over many of the humorous incidents and many of the more interesting and memorable incidents that occurred during the week. I believe that if we had kept notes on those sessions, we would have enough to fill a book today.
And Don, you've been treasurer for how long?
I started in when Dr. Vic Engel resigned in May of 1993. So 1994 was my first year to handle the whole thing by myself.
Tell us some of your most memorable experiences of festivals past.
The one incident that really stays with me in both a serious and a funny way occurred in 1994. If you recall, that was the last year when we charged a general admission into the festival grounds, and to provide some value added there, we had many different types of entertainment throughout the park. One of the entertainers I remember was dressed as the Pied Piper of Hamelin, and he told stories to the children in one of the pavilions in the back of the park that we knew as the Children's Grove. On Saturday night, he was finished with his tour of duty, of course, and he was enjoying some festival hospitality in the workers' tent. But he was a little bit disturbed that he hadn't been paid yet. His expressions of dissatisfaction came to the ear of several board members, and they went to the front office where I was located to pick up his check. I'll never forget the look on their faces when they saw the amount of the check. And I really believe that that was the tip of the iceberg for the board to really begin taking a hard look at how the funds were being spent down at the park, especially to provide the type of festival that we were having in those days. And that had to be analyzed very thoroughly in light of the revenues that we were receiving, especially after the 1994 results became known. And it was during one of our many discussions of the budget and the planning for the 1995 festival that I used the expression that the Pied Piper applied to himself on his promotional literature, that is, der Rattenfänger. Many people who don't understand the German probably misunderstood the phrase. Others misused the phrase or used the phrase in a different manner. In fact, to this day, whenever Julio sees me at Heritage Park, he says to me in his most serious manner, he's out there, he's looking for you. The spirit of der Rattenfänger lives on.
Translate Rattenfänger for us.
Well, literally, it's the rat catcher. Mm. But of course, that was applied to the fairy tale or story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin.
Don, over the many years that you've served as treasurer, you've seen many ups and downs in the budget and the end result of many different years of festivals. And I think I speak on behalf of the entire board when I say we are always just blown away by your accuracy and attention to detail and the hard work that you put into your treasurer's report. And not only your hard work there, but a lot of people don't realize you're always there for setup and cleanup, and you really dig right in and become a part of the board, and you're such a valued part of the festival. Your dedication is admirable. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Elaine Kern, thanks for joining us. Elaine, your husband Charlie was president of the festival in 1962. I understand you couldn't join him in his parade.
No, because I had just had Kevin, number 4's son, and with 3 other little boys running around, I didn't get a chance to ride in the parade.
And you've shared with me, now if you could share with everyone else a good memory you have of 1962 and a project you had.
Well, actually, it was 1961. when Charles was vice president, and he knew that I had a sewing machine and that I enjoyed sewing. So he asked me one day, would you like to sew a few flags? And I said, okay. So much to my surprise, one day he came home with 6 bolts of material, 3 blue, 3 white, and I ended up turning that material into 1,100 little flags.
That's
Like
the
this.
flag there? Oh
Right
my.
there, yeah.
1,100. Wow.
And also maybe 15 or 16 large flags. But it was quite a project, and I sputtered a lot while I was doing it, but I felt like I had really accomplished something when I was all done.
That's great. Well, your husband certainly, for more than 30 years, was a very large part of the festival down there every year, contributing, and I know the festival misses him dearly.
As I do.
John Dieterding, tell me, how did you get involved with the Civic Events Council?
Well, it happened, I think, back in the early 70s. I was dating this gal, and her dad was, I think, grounds chairman or second VP. And so he got me to go down there and work, painted barrels like they used to in those poles in the Big Ten area. And then one Saturday, I must have been 17 or 18 years old, I was working with this old man on the back of a truck. We're planting trees in that parking lot over by Kern ball field. And I worked all day, and he was working me, just beating me up because he was working so hard. And I was trying hard just to keep up with this old man, and I later figured out it was Al Nicholas. So he must have been in his mid-60s, and I was 18, and he was working me in the ground. So it's kind of interesting.
And then you were president what year?
I was president in '84.
Tell us some of your most memorable experiences of that year.
Well, '84 was a change from previous years because that was the first year we started to charge admission to the festival grounds. We started the show tent with Myron Florin and the entertainment. We had festival dinners there. It was a real challenge, but I think the bottom line that year, I think we made over $50,000, so I think it was pretty successful financially.
And you were the first year to have big name entertainment?
Yeah, Myron and all the German dancers and accordion players and things like that, and it was like a show tent type thing. I don't think that's done anymore, but that was the first year when that was started.
Who do you remember as being some of the key people during your year?
Well, there were a lot of key people. I got to know a lot of different people through the festival that I probably would not have gotten a chance to meet. Vic and Bonnie Engel. Spent a lot of time with Vic over at the vet clinic every morning. We'd meet over there. We'd talk about trying to solve the world's problems. Jill Szymanski, I don't know if anybody remembers Jill, Chris. She worked at the Chamber of Commerce. Irene Zeilinger. People had a lot of impact on my direction was Jerry Vanderveer, because he was the president the year I was first vice president, and he made some significant changes, and I think he really had a major impact on the festival for a long time.
Any problems or challenges that you faced being president?
I think just changing from having a free festival area to charging, I think it was $2 admission. That was well received, but that was probably the biggest challenge I think we had in 1984.
Any other memories you want to share?
Well, list could go on and on and on and on. How I got involved with the board of directors is I was working at Saginaw in Saginaw Division or Delphi Saginaw or whatever it's called now. And my boss at the time, Don Malmeister, asked me to be parking chairman. And I couldn't turn my boss down.
No.
So I was parking chairman about 2 or 3 years, and then I got involved with being on the board, and then first VP, and then president.
John, how would you sum up your festival experience?
I think the festival is a great opportunity to get to know a lot of different people, get know, the community, the different service organizations, all the great relationships that that I've made over the years. All the weather in '84 was absolutely the best weather that they've had. I mean, in a long time. There's always rain during festival. In '84, there wasn't a drop of rain until cleanup Sunday, and we were working in downpour all day long, and the water from the river came up to the back gates of the festival grounds. So we were really lucky. And I remember that cleanup day because Tom Fector was down there picking up some fence or something in the lightning, and it's kind of like, come on, Tom, let's take a break and go eat breakfast now. But that was the only rain we had on cleanup Sunday, so that really was not bad at all.
John, how would you sum up your festival experience?
Well, festival experience, I think, for me, was getting to know all the different people that I never really would have gotten to know being involved with the festival. You really get to know a lot of people if you work hard next to them and sweat next to them and do jobs that nobody else wants to do, haul garbage and all this kind of stuff. We used to have an animal tent there. I don't know if everybody remembers that, but it was always the president's job to clean up all the leftovers on cleanup Sunday, so that's one experience that I will never forget.
It's very glamorous being the president, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, the parade Sunday, I said earlier we had no rain, but it did rain during the parade for a few minutes, and as we're going down, I had my daughters riding in the car with us, and they went down to get some cover, but that was only a quick downpour, I think, for about 3 or 4 minutes there. I think it was about where Gary Rummel's insurance building was where we were at the time, but riding in the parade is really impressive.
And you had a young family then.
Yeah, that's about 12 years ago, and that's one thing my wife remembers about the festival is me never being home for about 3 or 4 years, and I think my oldest daughter was 7 at the time, and my youngest daughter was 3, so I have different memories than my wife does of the festival, but I think people's memory fades sometimes, so it was a good experience.
Good.
That trailer unit was, a temporary in 1970 or 71?
Mm-hmm.
And it used to clog up periodically, and Bill, the story goes, and I'm sure it gets better every year, but the story goes that the discharge was plugged, and he went down there, and he stuck his hand in there and dislodged, and he's got stories of size and lengths, and you don't want to know about it.
Bill, tell me how you got involved with the Civic Events Council.
Well, being an outsider and just moving into Frankenmuth, I had to, of course, start at the bottom and work my way up, so I started behind Senders, and we carried concrete blocks and built stages and bars, and carried many chairs, and we served beer out of the horse watering troughs with ice from McDonald's dairy, which was very difficult to get on a parade Sunday when you had to get through the traffic with 50-pound bags of ice. And of course, tearing it down, I had to smash my finger in a concrete block, and I had that bandaged up for a year. And the next year it was more of the same thing. Carried concrete blocks again, and so I decided that in order to get out of that business, I had to stop and bang my finger. I had it bandaged for another year. It takes exactly a year to grow a fingernail out. So the year after that, the festival moved to the to the Bavarian Inn. And in that year I was tent chairman for Bob Protzman. We had to make a new layout of the tents and facilities, and that was, I think, the year that the Hereford boy got hit when we had the tornado and knocked the tents down, tore up all the booths. And from there we went to the park. And of course that was a learning experience and a growing experience down there. We did not have much money. So we had to make do with what we had, and all of our facilities were not the best and most reliable in the world. We finally got the new electrical system, which was the pride of the world down there, and we got the big trailer and was able to cool down our beer most of the time, unless we had a storm and blew the power. And we did save a few cut a few corners when we was building it, and we didn't have a main master switch to shut down the 600 amp line. And when we blew the big fuses during the thunderstorm, well, we had to go out and change those with the line hot. And of course we didn't have a spare fuse, so we at 10:30 at night made a fuse out of a T fence post, steel one, and whanged it in with a hammer. The lights came back on, the beer got cold, and everyone hooped and hollered, so they were happy. Long about that time, we started up a water show of our own, just to add another event to the festival. And I know, Sue, you will be interested in that. We had our own water show, and we had to practice, and we had to practice when it was almost snowing, and the poor girls froze to death. Well, we got where we could get 5 up on skis at one time and make the U-turn, and everyone hollered and hooped, so it was okay.
Really?
And so then the next year after that, they thought, well, we'll have the water show again. And got some boys interested, and we contacted the ski club, Silver Lake, and rented their ramp so that they could jump. And then after maybe 3 weeks of good practice, we got to the point where one could go over the ramp and one could go under it, and it zigzagged. They'd been watching the shows from Florida and all that, until I think it was Tom Worley that landed on Rick Monk with his skis. Didn't quite clear it, but the show was good. But it was the last time we had the ramp. Worked our way up and got to where I was the second vice president under Dick Kraft and Arnold Krieger. And our goal then was to keep the tent open all the way through the week. We had a pretty good record in that time period of having the sheriff department and Henry Zink shut us down about 10 o'clock at night. So our goal was to get it going so that we could make it through the week. And of course we had to have the beer sales because that was our working money and profit. And so we did push beer. And as a result, why, we had a few problems. But we got it under control. We put on turnstiles and monitored the crowd. And Dick almost made it through the week, but they got him on the last Saturday night. And I had very good trainers. Arnold was terrific, and Dick Kraft is the best man I've ever worked for. He's smart and nice, and it's just a man. I've had a lot of bosses, and he is by far the best of any of them. And on my week, I thought, by golly, we're going to get through this thing. And I had George Andrews following me, and George was there, and he wanted to make sure we got through this year so the next year it would be all in line, because we had all the fine details done, and we did make it. We got through Saturday night. I'm glad that we had a little more chat off the air, Sue, and there's a lot of stories, a lot of incidents, a lot of people involved. Your father was a tent chairman right behind